A circle is a set of all points that are equal distant from a given point. That given point is called the center. A line segment that joins the center of your circle to any point on the outside of the circle is called the radius. And the line that touches the circle at one point is called tangent. So if we do a circle here, now we can come along and do a tangent line. Tangent line would touch that circle at one point and continue on, but it would not actually cross through the inside part of the circle. This is an example of a tangent line touching at one point right up here. Circles, once again, are another form of conic sections that we're going to be looking at. There are two forms of conic sections, the hyperbolas and ellipses, that we will save for Precalc. Now, all circles can be written in the form of x minus h all squared plus y minus k all squared equaling your radius squared. The h and k is the center of your circle, and r is your radius. So here we need to find the equation of a circle whose center is 2, negative 5, and your radius is 7. So it's always x minus the x-coordinate of your vertex, so we'll go x minus our 2, all squared, plus, and then it's always y minus the y-coordinate of your center, which is a negative 5, and then it's going to be equal to your radius, which is 7, squared. So we get x minus 2 all squared, plus a y plus 5, because when you subtract a negative, it's adding, equaling 49, because that's 7 squared. Here we need to go ahead and find the equation of a circle whose endpoints of the diameter are here and here. Well, this is the end of your diameter, and the exact middle of your diameter is your center of your circle. While the exact middle of a line segment we also call your midpoint. So we're going to find the midpoint of these 2 points. Midpoint, once again, you got to add your x's, divide by 2. Add your y's, divide by 2. So you get 4 over 2, which is 2. You get 6 over 2, which is 3. Now, your radius, remember, would go from your center just out to your circle. So to find our radius here, we're going to go ahead and use our center, and then we're going to just use one of our points of the diameter, because that would go from our center out to the outside edge. So we're going to go ahead and go 2 minus 2 all squared, and then 2 or 8 minus our 3. So we're using this point here, subtracting the 2x coordinates all squared, subtracting the 2y coordinates all squared. So we end up getting 0 squared, which is 0. Here we get a 5 squared, which is 25, but then you got to take the square root of that, so we end up with 5. So we know our center is 2, 3, our radius is 5. So we need to go x minus the x-coordinate of our center, all squared, plus y minus the y-coordinate of our center, all squared, equals our radius squared. Our radius is 5. 5 squared is 25. Here we need to go ahead and graph this. It's in the standard form. Remember, the standard form is x minus h squared plus our y minus k squared is equal to your radius squared. So the x-coordinate of your vertex is always the opposite of what's after the x. The y-coordinate of your center, I think it said vertex or center I'm talking about, is always the opposite of what's after the y. So that's negative 2. Now, this right here, 4, correlates to r squared. So the question is, what is r? Well, if r squared is equal to 4, to solve it for r, you'd have to take the square root. Now, since the radius can't be negative, we don't have to be concerned about the negative root, so the square root of 4 is 2. So to graph this, plot your center. 4 units over, 2 units down. Your radius is 2, so go 2 units to the right, 2 units to the left, 2 units down, 2 units up from your center. Then go ahead and draw a smooth curve going around all those. For your circle. And you'll notice my circle's a little bit off here. My grid must be a little bit off. But you have the general idea. We also have an equation of a circle here. And we need to find the center and the radius. But to find the center and the radius, we need to get it in that standard form. The x minus hl squared plus the y minus kl squared equaling your radius squared. So we need to complete the square. We need to complete the square with the x's. We need to complete the square with the y's. So you want to go ahead and rewrite this so you have the x's together, and then you want to put the y's together. If you had any number added or subtracted to the x's and y's without any variables, you'd want to take it to the other side. Well, completing the square. You want to take half of your 8, which is 4, and square it. And if we added that to the left of the equal sign, we'd also have to add it to the right of the equal sign. For your y's, you got to take half of your b, which would be a negative 3, and square it. But a negative 3 squared is a positive 9, which is the same as 3 squared. So if we add it to the left side, we've got to also add it to the right side. Now, what we have here in the very beginning will factor down. That will factor into an x plus 4 all squared. Remember, what's being squared in the beginning goes in the beginning. What's being squared in the end goes in the end. Then we go plus. And then we got to look at the y stuff. The y stuff, you use the same approach. What's being squared in the beginning, which is a y. Always take the first sign, remember. What's being squared in the end is a 3. Then over here on the right, we take our 0, our 9, and 16, add them together. We end up getting 25. Your center, remember, is always the opposite of what's after the x, opposite of what's after the y. Then you want to go ahead and find your radius. This is r squared, so r squared is equal to 25. So therefore, r, when you take the square root, is 5, so your radius is 5. So go ahead and complete that with this one here. So the first thing you want to do is to get the variables by themselves, so you got to take your plus 4 to the other side. And you want to group your x's together, so your x squared and your 9x I'm going to put together. My y and my minus 8y I'll put together. Then you got to complete the square with the x's, so you got to take half of 9, which is a 9 over 2, all squared. If I add that on the left, I'd have to add it on the right. Well, 9 squared and 2 squared would be an 81 over 4. When I'm looking at my y's, I got to take half of 8, which would be 8 over 2, which is 4. So I got to go a 4 squared. If I go a 4 squared here, I'd also have to go a 4 squared over here, which is 16. What's being squared in the beginning is x. Take the first sign. What's being squared here? 9 over 2, all squared, plus, now we got to do the same with y's. What's being squared in the beginning of the y's? A y. Take the first sign. What's being squared at the end? 4. And then on the far right-hand side, we take our negative 4, our 16 is 12, and add that to 81 over 4. We get 129 over 4. So we now have it in the standard form, but we need to find our center and our radius. Remember, your center is always the opposite of what's after the x, opposite of what's after the y. Now, the 129 over 4, remember, is in the spot of r squared. So it's r squared equals 129 over 4. So to solve it for r, you'd have to take the square root of the top, square root of the bottom. Square root of the bottom works out to be nice, neat, 2. Square root of 129 doesn't change, so it's the square root of 129 all over 2.